All right, we are coming back with White Stallions of Lipizza, Chapter 21. Barina plays a trick. Uh-oh. As the months of training went on, Hans returned home less and less often. He could not bear to hear Henry's familiar taunt. "Well, boy, when you are going to get off the ground?" The question stung. The more so because Hans himself wondered, and he had no answer. So his uncle is teasing him about the fact that he rides the horse, but they don't do any aerial movements yet. His whole world now was at the Hofburg. The stables on one side of the Josephplatz, the Reitschule on the other. Lessons and work intensified. A string of young ivory gray stallions arrived from Piber. Stable duties doubled. Added to his own work on the more advanced gates, this left little time for observing the senior riding masters at practice from 10 until noon each day. However, how was he ever going to learn the mysteries of the corbeille if he couldn't watch how it was done? He envied the visitors who dropped in on daily rehearsals. He would gladly have given half his wages for the privilege. Everything was different on Sunday. Then Hans tiptoed up to a corner of the gallery and watched Barina ridden by Herr Wittek during the regular public performance. Hungrily, he studied their corbeille. It was always magnificent perfection, full of animation and joy, but it puzzled Hans that both man and stallion seemed content with 2 leaps. As he watched, a dream grew in him, a resolve to inspire Barina to lift that 1,000 pounds again and again, to make him a champion once more. The ambition deepened as the weeks went by, but Hans was still working on the ground with no promise of when aerial work would begin. On the anniversary of their 2nd year, Colonel Podhasky addressed the apprentices as they stood in line underneath the imperial box. "Congratulations," he greeted them warmly, "on surviving your rigorous early training. Thus far, only one of your fellow apprentices is missing." His face grew serious. "I urge all of you to believe that it is no disgrace to be dismissed. I can think of no other art, painting, sculpture, music, poetry, that demands more iron self-discipline than the life here. If you should be told you have not the stamina nor the talent to continue, be comforted by the knowledge that there are many less exacting professions." Hans was aghast. Failure had never occurred to him. "How soon you are ready to work über der Erde," the colonel was explaining, "depends upon individual progress. Another year for some of you, even longer for others." The silence that followed on his words was awesome. Come, come," the colonel smiled. "The time will fly like that." And he snapped his fingers to show how fast it would go. "To develop a good seat, pliant, upright, deep, is a subtle and difficult art. Unless your balance is perfect, you will disturb the balance of your horse. In short, you must achieve a perfect unison on the ground before you are ready to fly." He started to say more, but there was a shuffling of feet overheard as the balconies began filling with the 10 o'clock visitors. At the same moment, a stable boy entered the hall, leading a bright bay Le Panzanier. He handed over the reins to Colonel Podhasky. The colonel eyed the dark fellow in affection. Then, with obvious eagerness to get into the saddle, he mounted in one easy motion and rode off. To Hans's joy, he could recognize the collected walk, the horse's head almost vertical, and the hind legs well under the body, the action elevated. Almost as if the colonel's words had been a warning, a second apprentice was dropped the following week. This did not make Hans's work harder, for he was already working the sun up to sundown. This did not make Hans work harder, for he was already working the sun up and down. Some nights, before undressing, he fell onto his bed intending to read a technical book of instruction, but he was so tired that after a page or 2 he fell asleep in the glare of the light bulb. And if Kurt did not waken him, he slept through the night with his clothes on. Yet with all his work, he was happy, like a journeyman who knows he is on the right road with the right horse under him. In the beginning, Barina had readily accepted Hans as a green pupil and had taken him through the elementary paces with little guidance. But as time went on, Hans began to see that it was not Herr Wittek who was the stern taskmaster. It was Barina. So who's given him the hard time? Barina is. One morning, in full view of Colonel Podhasky, he gave Hans a sharp lesson. Herr Wittek had asked for the passage, or Spanish step, which Hans already knew as a swinging trot with high action. He had ridden it several times, and it always had the heavy sensation of scuttling on a cloud. And had always had the heady sensation of scudding on a cloud, so he feels like he's floating on a cloud. So high and suspended were Barina's steps. Always before, Barina had performed the passage with measurable cadence, yet today Hans sensed a change in him. Was it skittishness? Boredom? Hans couldn't help asking himself. Will I give the aids strong enough or too strong so that he might break into an extended trot? Carefully, he positioned his hands, reassuring himself. Why, Barina collects easily. Already, he gives the forward impulse. Now, drive him forward with your legs. Hold him back with your hands. Keep his head almost vertical. Hans's spirits soared. He felt himself into the trot, thought himself in full control. Barina was stepping forward with great liveliness, but Hans was blissfully unaware that the stallion was playing a trick on him. He was indeed stepping forward with high front action, but he was not following up with his hindquarters. He was shuffling along, swinging his hind legs in a lazy, dragging motion. Nothing escaped Colonel Podchaski. He was fascinated by the cunning of Barina. The Ritter Wittick, too, was struck dumb. The silence grew as the false trot went on. The only sound was made by Barina, a kind of snort with each stride. What a swindle Barina pulls, the colonel chuckled as he rolled alongside Herr Wittick. The teacher horse gives an unforgettable lesson, eh? It's clever how he decides to be lazy when the aids come too little and too late. Hans never knew how he managed to finish the lesson. It was horrible, this failure in front of the colonel. That night his dreams were dark and mysterious. He was in the riding hall, and Barina was the only living thing in the dark, and his feet had 4 toes like prehistoric horses, only they were long like fingers and very white. With those creepy front toes, he was pointing around to his hawks, and his snorting laughter was so real that Hans awoke, drenched in sweat. Ugh, that's a creepy nightmare. All the rest of the night he lay worrying, wondering if Barina would ever have confidence in him again, wondering if he would be the next apprentice to be sent home. Here's a picture of the horse, the nightmare horse with finger feet. That is pretty creepy, huh? All right, we'll see you next time.